good evening, and welcome to our latest in conversation. And this evening, I'm delighted to be joined by author Sandie Jones. And Sandie has this is her fourth book, and we'll talk a little bit more about her book, The Guilt Trip, just shortly. These events are free, but if you'd like to give a donation to Libraries Unlimited, which is the charity that runs the 54 libraries in Devon and Torbay, there is a link in the chat. And we are also posting to over 30 libraries across Devon this evening. So hello to all the other libraries and also our friends at the Bookery. If you'd like to ask a question, please pop in the chat and I'll ask Sandie. So Sandie has worked as a freelance journalist for over 20 years and has written for publications including the Sunday Times, Women's Weekly and the Daily Mail. She lives in London with her husband and 3 children. And The Other Woman was her debut novel, but you've since written 3 more, and The Guilt Trip, which I have here, which I'm halfway through at the moment, is her 4th novel. So would you like to tell us about The Guilt Trip, Sandie? And thank you for joining us this evening.
Yes, hello, Karen. Yes, so The Guilt Trip is indeed my 4th novel. It's a domestic suspense, and it's about 5 friends who think they know everything there is to know about each other. But as we probably all know, you don't actually really know each other until you either live with them or you go on holiday. And these 5 friends do indeed go off on a trip to Portugal to celebrate a wedding of one of them, Will. But the problem begins when Ali, his bride, who is kind of the new member of the group, they're a tight-knit group, but she's the kind of 6th member of the group. They don't know her very well. And even before they've got on the plane, she is causing all kinds of mayhem and rubbing a lot of people up the wrong way. And as soon as they land, the whole group kind of implodes, really, because there's secrets, there's lies, betrayals, they all kind of come spilling out, and with devastating consequences, yes, for one of them.
Indeed, and yes. As you said, they go off for this wedding in Portugal, for Ali and Will's wedding, and we know pretty much from the prologue, from the very first page, we know someone has died. We don't know who at all. We just know it is a person. We don't know if it's one of the group. We don't know if it's somebody else who pops up in the book. We don't know anything. No. And I really like that. I do like a prologue, and I think it's always nice to have one sort of just bubbling away as you read through, and you're thinking, oh, I wonder who this is going to be.
It is a funny thing. I like a prologue as well, and I do also like an epilogue as well. I think I've done a recent kind of poll, just a really kind of casual thing, and people do tend to like an epilogue as well. And I just, as you say, it kind of gives, the prologue gives obviously a really good kind of taster of what's to come, and you're kind of constantly waiting for whatever it is to happen. And then I hope the epilogue kind of, I like to tie things up, Karen, but not with too much of a pretty bow. I do like to leave something, just something hanging, so that the reader can make their own minds up as to really what happened. So I hope I've done that with The Guilt Trip.
I mean, like you said, they don't really take to Ali at all, do they? And like in the first few pages, she's like you said, bringing out the worst in everybody, and some of the other characters are quite annoying as well, aren't they? I'm not going to go into detail, but did you intend for them to be like that, or did they just sort of evolve into this character?
It's funny because a couple of people have mentioned how unlikable they are, and I quite liked a few. As I was writing them, I was thinking they were really quite nice people. But I don't necessarily think that unlikable characters are a bad thing, especially in a suspense or a thriller. You don't have to. As I say, I did quite like 1 or 2 of them. I thought they were quite well-rounded and balanced individuals, but readers, I think, see it slightly differently, and I just don't think you have to love all the characters to love the book. And so they just kind of wrote themselves really as I go along, because I don't really plan anything at all, unfortunately. So it just kind of happens as I write, which has its advantages and disadvantages. So I just yes, they are. I think they probably are now looking at it with fresh eyes. They probably are they all have their foibles, and Ali, I think we've probably all got or had an Ali in our lives. She's quite a drama queen, and everything centres around her, or she wants it to centre around her, and nothing. Everything about her. She's kind of bought the T-shirt, and she's kind of she's that kind of woman. That you either kind of embrace. I mean, she's great in very small doses, but you either kind of embrace her, or you probably, some of us are maybe kind of given her a bit of short shrift in our own relationships, in our own friendship groups, perhaps. But she's not quite what she seems in the guilt trip.
No. And I think she, it's interesting, isn't it? Because like Will is their friend, and she's sort of been sort of thrust upon them, and he's always had sort of a bit of a nomadic life, hasn't he? So they're a bit surprised when, he decides that, he's going to marry her, and, she starts talking about children, and they're all a bit like, oh, okay, because they don't really see that side of Will at all.
No. I mean, she's kind of come along, and she's a whirlwind to everybody, and she's obviously quite literally swept him off his feet.
Yeah.
He's of an age where he's beginning to think that, okay, if not now, then when? And he does want to settle down. He's a thoroughly nice guy, and he wants to settle down. He wants to have a family, and he wants to kind of have roots somewhere now, having lived this kind of nomadic lifestyle. And he thinks she's the one.
Which is in contrast to his brother, isn't he? Because Jack. So Jack is another. So Jack and Rachel are married, and I did quite like Rachel. I must admit, she was one of my favourites. I think Will and Rachel, and possibly Noah as well. But I am only halfway through, so that could change.
Okay, good.
Paige, I didn't take to at all.
Okay.
But I sort of wanted to, because I sort of liked her friendship with Rachel, and
what don't you like about her?
I don't know, really. I can't.
It's just okay.
She's quite. I mean, I guess it's probably like I wonder whether it's because she's quite confident, and I think women are a bit funny about confident women. I don't know. She knows what she wants, doesn't she? And I think I probably saw more of myself in Rachel than I did of Paige. Because she's got children going off to university, and I also thought Paige, I wasn't really sure that she's sort of, with Rachel, she's sort of, Jack is in charge, and Paige is very much in charge in their relationship, isn't she? So it's that, I don't know, something just about her. I'm interested to see where she goes.
Okay.
But there's also that undercurrent, isn't there? So Noah and Rachel were close friends before Jack and Paige came on the scene.
Yes, they were at uni together. So they do have some history. We don't know quite what that history is.
No.
But there's definitely something there that kind of was there when they were 21, 22-year-olds. They're now kind of 40. And there is undeniably still something there. They're probably not quite sure what it is either. But it's just another layer of, I say a complicated friendship group, but I don't know. I think the six of them together is quite an ordinary friendship group, really. And until kind of obviously things kind of get slightly more out of hand, I think all those sort of undercurrents and the kind of history that one or two share and the others don't, and I just think it's the foundations of a very kind of ordinary friendship group until Ali really comes along and just blows that all up.
And I sort of enjoyed the friendship, the female friendships in that, because I think women have you have different friendships, don't you, in life. You have different friends for different things, and you can be friends with someone who's completely different to you are, and that works. So I enjoyed getting to know the characters. Were they based on people that or have experience of?
Not so much. Ali, there is definitely somebody I've known in my past that reminds me a great deal of Ali. And I say she's in my past. She's still kind of around, but that sounds dreadful. But she's, as I say, she's fabulous company, but in short doses, or small doses rather. I just Yeah, I just think there are a few women that are they're just it's all about them, and it's, you know, they want to be centre of attention all the time, and that was fine when I was kind of 21, 22. Now I'm sort of quite a bit older. That's quite a draining friendship to be in, I think. So yeah, so Ali is definitely, I've definitely had somebody in mind for Ali. But the others, as I say, I think I agree with you, Karen. I think Rachel is probably more me. I think her, you know, her insecurities that she kind of possesses and kind of come to the fore, I think that's probably a lot of me. And Paige is probably someone I'd quite like to be, but probably never will be, because I'm not that confident or that outgoing or that sort of self-assured. So yeah, I think there's just, you just pick up bits, don't you, of other people, and kind of just, and yourself, because there's no getting away from it. I can't.
Absolutely. No.
There's definitely, yeah, I kind of creep into a lot of my characters completely unintentionally, but I'm definitely in a lot of them. But yeah, I agree with you. Rachel is probably the one I relate to the most in this.
Are you able to see that when you read your stuff back, or do other people say to you, "Oh, that reminds me of you"? Or
Yes.
Yeah.
My husband reads a lot of the male characters. He's going, oh, well, didn't I do that last week? It's like, oh, did you? Yeah, there is a lot of that. But also, I think people that know me, I think it's getting easier for them. I think once with the other woman, I think people read it, and the people that know me just like, all I can hear and see is you talking, and just, you know, the turn of phrase was me. But obviously it has to be, because I can't write something that isn't me. It's odd. It's really odd. But I think I'm separating myself a little bit more from each book as I go along, because friends and family now are just not quite seeing so much of me in the fourth book as they did the first. So yeah, I don't know what that says. Maybe I'm either getting better at writing, or I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I guess as well, there's, I mean, like you said, you can only put so much of yourself into them, and I guess as you become more sort of, you know, developed as a writer, I guess you pull in other things and reading as well. I imagine reading, you know, you can pull in other things, and also just seeing other people. But it must be, I can't imagine that you can write as anybody else but yourself.
I don't think so. I think you could probably get away with it for maybe, I don't know, a third of a book. You know, if you were really kind of, really kind of focused on being somebody else or something else. But I don't know why you'd want to, and B, I don't, you know, the 2/3 of the book, the rest of the 2/3 would kind of uncover who you really are and what you really are. So I do admire, I mean, there are definitely authors out there that can do it, and do it very well, but I don't see how I could do that yet. I'm not quite at that stage, I don't think.
Was it, because I mean, you've got 6 characters in this book, and Rachel, it's written from Rachel's point of view.
Yeah.
But was it difficult to write 6 characters, because that's quite a lot, isn't it? For like normally there's like 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 or 4, but 6 is a lot. Yeah,
and it was a real departure for me from my first 3 books, which have tended really to kind of be a triangle of characters. Certainly the first 3, and I was very comfortable with that. So when I kind of started thinking about the guilt trip, I sort of pitched it, or the synopsis to my editors, my publishers, were that it was going to be 2 couples, and they were going to go off and do all these things in Portugal at this wedding, and they kind of said, yeah, great idea, love this, but what about throwing in another couple, you know, another 2 more characters, let's make it 6. And I was just like, whoa, no, I don't think I can handle 6. I'm not very good actually at as a reader trying to keep hold of that many characters. So I was just very, very nervous of making them, you know, all very, very clear and concise and different from each other, so that they all had very kind of clear voices. So that hopefully the reader didn't have to kind of keep going backwards and forwards to kind of check who was who. So I think I've allowed, sort of in my head, I was allowing maybe 3 or 4 chapters for the reader to try and hopefully work out who was with who kind of knew who before, who was kind of the interloper in the whole group. And yeah, and I think I do have to say, I think my publishers were right, because having that kind of that third couple just gave me a lot more freedom and flexibility to kind of play around with the plot, and it would have been actually quite stilted, I think, if it had just been the 4 of them and 2 couples. So, you know, as ever, my publishers are right when they suggest
it seems to
something.
be quite a lot. That I remember talking to other authors. Publishers do. I mean, they know, don't they? They've done it so many times that they know
Absolutely,
what doesn't work.
And I do. I you know, when an email comes in or a phone call comes in, I kind of sort of go, oh no, here we go. I can do whatever they're going to ask, I can do it. But they, as you say, that I don't really. I'm still very, very new to this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what, you know, what sells, what doesn't, and they are, you know, they're the masters of it, aren't they? So yeah, I absolutely trust their judgment and their instinct completely.
And what sort of made you write it from Rachel's point of view? Was there anything particularly that you was that because, like you said, it was your voice, so like not your voice exactly, but
yeah, I think she would just seem to be the most ordinary to me out of all of them. And obviously, if I did actually start thinking about write it from Ali's point of view, but then I thought that gives away too much too soon, because Ali is in the thick of it all the time. You know, she is in the centre of everything that goes on. If I was using her voice, it was going to be quite tricky to not reveal, you know, the things that are obviously going to be revealed to Rachel. So, and I also quite like the idea of the reader being Rachel almost, so that they're discovering everything that goes on at the same time as the protagonist. I tend to like that. And I'm comfortable, you know, working with that. So as I say, I think she was just the most relatable. And you just think that nothing too bad could happen to Rachel. Well, you have no idea.
I'm only halfway, so I can't say. I hope
okay,
not. I'll be really devastated if anything happens to Rachel. So we're not going to give away anymore. We're not going to give anything away about who dies, and mainly because I don't actually know myself yet. So although I might have had a little peep, but because
you don't do that. Don't do that, Karen. You don't do that.
I do.
You go to the end and have a little peek.
I do. My husband's horrified about it. Yeah.
Do you do that with most books that you read?
Not all. Quite a lot of crime I do, because I don't want to be disappointed. So wasted. I don't want to spend like loads of hours and have guessed who it is.
So you know, so then you go back to kind of the beginning.
Yeah, I don't. I just sometimes it doesn't even make sense, because you're just like, that doesn't make sense, because you don't know who all the characters are, so you don't know where that's No, I know.
But are you as invested in the story even once you know the ending? You are? Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes even more so, because it's a bit like watching a television program that you've watched loads and loads of times before.
Right.
I think I really like Agatha Christie, and I read like a lot of her books again. And I don't know, something just maybe, I don't know why I started doing it, but it's a bit of a habit now.
What a shocker.
Sorry to everybody who's watching as I reveal my guilty secret about reading the end of books before I start them. So did you know who would die when you started writing the book?
No, not a clue. As I say, I'm not a planner. I literally just start writing and see where it takes me. And the first draft, I need to be very careful. The first draft, a different person was dead at the end of it. Yes, so a different person to who. I don't even want to talk about genders. Yes, a different person was dead in my first draft to the person that is dead at the end of the finished Guilt Trip. Yes. So, and no, I haven't got a clue. I have a very vague kind of idea at the beginning when I start writing, but unfortunately there's no middle or end at all.
Scary.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes, but the scariest thing is that obviously my editors and publishers want to have a very clear idea. With the other woman, it's fine because I just wrote that not with anything in mind at all. I just wrote it just to prove to myself that I might be able to write the book. So there was none of that kind of pressure. But, you know, kind of once you then get a publishing contract, they kind of want to know up front, just really in 2 pages, what's going to happen. And that is really, really tricky. That's, for me, for sure, the hardest part of the whole process, because I just don't know what's going to happen. So the synopsis is, although they kind of sign the synopsis off and say, yeah, it sounds great, or, you know, just maybe look at adding another couple in or something like that. It very rarely reflects the end product, which I'm not sure how my publishers feel about that, but I just can't. It feels like I'm kind of forcing it if I just sort of sit and even if I gave myself a week or 2 to kind of come up with just these 2 pages, it just would feel that I was forcing it. So and I think they kind of know that by now, so they kind of give me a little bit of, I guess,
if that's your style and the way that you write, you can't change it to be something else.
No, I don't. I think you are either one way or the other as a writer. I've not met many authors that kind of change from being a planner to a pantser or vice versa. I think you're kind of naturally either one or the other, aren't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think from talking to people, that does seem to be. I know some people who are pantsers would quite like to be planners, but if it's not in your makeup, it's not in your makeup, is it? It's just.
No, I've got this very redundant, lovely, great big whiteboard, but it's just blank. I'd like to have all sorts of post-it notes and colour coordinated string, but it's just blank. Nothing on it.
Much more exciting. I think it's much more. I guess it's much more exciting. Do you write quickly? Do you?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do write very, very quickly. Once I'm in it, I want to keep going. And I don't take kindly actually to sort of interruptions or normal everyday life, which is unfortunate for my family. But I do tend to, once I start, I just want to keep going. And I think I'm probably better. I think certainly with the guilt trip, I was kind of there was, I think, because it was right in the middle of everything, sort of in the darkest months of last year, and nobody knew really what was going on or how anything was going to play out. It was all very quite, it was really quite open-ended, with just that kind of right of the schedule and the writing of it and the timeline and everything. But then once they kind of sort of stuck a deadline on me, then I was off. Yeah, but I was kind of meandering for quite a while last year. But I think that was like everybody really.
People had that. Yeah, I think it was just a really weird time, wasn't it?
Yeah, our brains just weren't working quite right, and it just took a long while to kind of get used to everything that was going on and what was going to come of it, really, didn't it?
So as the book progresses, it gets more and more blurred about the relationships, doesn't it? About who likes who and what's going on, and how do you manage to weave in the secrets to the story without revealing too much? Because obviously you don't want to like give away everything, like on page 100, and you've still got like 150 to go.
Yeah, I really don't know the answer to that, Karen. I really don't know.
Does it just come naturally then?
I think it must do. Yeah, I think it must do. I think I do like to leave each chapter on a sort of a mini cliffhanger, I suppose. And so I suppose I'd like to think that at the end of every chapter, there was something that kind of poses a question or begs a question to kind of get the reader to kind of turn the page and go, okay, one more chapter. But that is not intentional. That just seems to happen. So, and I'm not really one of those that kind of has to be, every chapter has to be 20 pages. If that kind of happens after 8 pages, for example, then I'll leave it there and I'll stop and I'll start another chapter. But no, I don't know. I know that authors kind of cut it down into thirds, I think, and just kind of have a sort of or try to have a big reveal every third, or a twist or whatever you like to call it. But I'm not that kind of scientific. I just kind of write and then and see where it gets me, really.
I think that does sort of come over because it is fast paced, isn't it? And I think that sort of comes, so obviously as you write it, I like a book that, you know, gallops along and I want to keep reading it, and this one is definitely that. It really sort of hooks you in, and really from the beginning you want to carry on reading, and that's, you know, whether that's something that you do intentionally or not, it definitely works, doesn't it? So
good. Oh, that's really good to hear. Yeah, that's music to my ears, actually. So that's all I'd like it to be, but I don't know how that happens. Yeah,
that's good. Keep doing it, because I mean,
let's hope I can.
Because actually your first book, The Other Woman, which you mentioned, your debut, was quite extraordinary in itself, because it was chosen as a Reese Witherspoon Book of the Month, and that's pretty amazing, isn't it, for a debut? So was that quite overwhelming, and did it sort of make book 2 hard? Did you feel like under more pressure with book 2 because of that?
I think so. I think it was it was just totally unbelievable to me. And I really do mean that. I just, the Other Woman I wrote in secret, as I say, it was just a project for me, just to kind of prove to myself that, you know, it was just something that it was on my bucket list, and I just needed to kind of tick it off and say, yes, I've written a book, and it's now filed away in my cabinet and will never see the light of day, but at least I did it. So I didn't tell anybody at all. I didn't tell my husband, my children. I just did it as a kind of very secret project, and I genuinely didn't think I just wasn't thinking commercially. I wasn't thinking of getting it published. It really was just something for me.
Yeah.
And then it got to the end of it, and I was kind of reading. I was thinking, okay, that's not bad. I really quite like it, and I'm proud of it. And you know, after a few weeks of sitting with it, I thought, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? I will just send it out to my kind of top 5 agents, you know, that are ridiculously up there, you know, the top of my list, or anyone's list, I'm sure. And they all came back very, very quickly, you know, within a day or two. And I just, but even then, Karen, you just think, wow, okay, so somebody likes it. And then it just kind of grows and grows. And then you kind of think, well, then you hear that Reese Witherspoon has not only read it, but I mean, I was knee deep in Big Little Lies, actually, as I was writing it. So and so I was watching that. I was playing the soundtrack, which I found hugely inspirational. And I just remember all that, and then just to find out that, you know, she'd not only read it, but she'd chosen it as, you know, among the millions of books that are out there. Still just completely and utterly crazy, blows me away. But yes, I think it can't help but add to, I think that obviously everyone speaks about this book 2 being a real kind of problem for a lot of authors, because there's so much excitement around the debut, and everybody kind of, so I've been told, everybody likes to feel that they've discovered this debut author themselves as a reader. So it's kind of gets this kind of huge hype, and then that was added to it. And book 2 for me was, it's now that it's done and it's published is great, but to write was a complete nightmare. And you know, and I wrote what I thought was a great book, and I sent it into my publishers, and they just kind of came back and said, this isn't right, it's not going to work, it's not, you know, it's just not where it needs to be. So pretty much I trashed the whole lot and started again. So it was a complete rewrite. But you know, but again, that they were right, you know, they were, but I was just in a very different position writing book 2 as I was for my debut. So, and you just learn from this, don't you? And I hope, if they're watching, I hope I'm better at it now that I've just delivered book 5. I hope it's not such a disaster as book 2 was.
And I think also with book 1, it's like you said, yours was secret, wasn't it? So nobody knew you were doing it. So there was no
No.
pressure to get it out on a particular
No.
date, or pressure to do anything at all, really, because
No.
it was yours, and it was you that decided. Whereas when you start getting, you know, book deals and things, and you start getting deadlines and stuff, I imagine it changes from being that little project to being a job.
Hugely, yeah. It's a whole load of other stuff that comes with it, which
Yeah.
is all wonderful and incredible in itself, but it is very, very different to just doing something quietly for yourself. Yeah.
So what part of the writing process do you find the hardest? Is it like the first draft? Is it the edit? Is it the...
No, as I say, I think, and I don't know whether it's classed as part of the process. I suppose it is, but that synopsis up front is for me by far the hardest. And that could that could be like 700 words, Karen. It just doesn't make sense, really, because I could write 100,000, it's a piece of cake to write 100,000, but those 700 words up front, I really, really struggle with, which is exactly the stage I'm at now, actually, with book 6. So, and I actually love the first draft. I deliver the first draft genuinely believing, really naively, I found out that, that's going to be the finished one. And, I'm happy with that. It's as strong as it can possibly be. And that's going to be what's, gets on the bookshelves this time next year. But it never, ever is. And I actually quite like, as I say, I like, even when my inbox kind of pings with an email from my editors, and I know that it's going to be all the edits and the suggestions, and I kind of just wince a little. But I actually love that process. I love kind of stepping away from it for a few weeks, going back in with fresh eyes, and just, even if I don't necessarily take on all their suggestions, it just starts my mind thinking, okay, but they think maybe I should do something there, but I don't necessarily think that's right. But what about it? And I love that part of it. And although, as I say, I think that I can't possibly do any more, invariably, as we all do, 6-8 weeks later, it's a whole different book. So, and much better and much stronger for it. So yeah, I do love that part.
Did you always want to write? Because you were a journalist, weren't you, before you were an author? And so that was all. Did you sort of do journalism at university, sort of thing, and then sort of...
No, I didn't go to uni. Actually, I'm not a trained writer at all. I just went. I was sort of secretary in a media company, and knew that that's what I wanted to do, and just kind of wrote to all the editors for magazines, kind of national, monthly and weekly women's magazines, and I just wrote to all the editors in the building and just said, look, I really, just give me a chance, just, anything that you need doing in lunch hours or after work, I'm here, and don't want any payment or anything. And that's kind of how it started. And then I went freelance quite quickly after that, once I've kind of built up all my contacts and a good portfolio. So I knew it was what I wanted to do. But as I say, this is now only 3 or 4 years of fiction writing. So and that just wasn't, as I say, it was always on the bucket list and thinking I want to write a book, but because being a journalist, fiction was just so far out of my remit that it just, I have to report word for word in, being a journalist. So I just didn't think I had the imagination in me for fiction. But now I don't think I could go back now, to be honest, Karen, because I'm so used to now being given this free reign of
might get into trouble if you had to write something.
I don't know what I'd make up.
I'll just change this little bit here, won't matter.
I think I'd be sued left, right and centre. I think I'd struggle to go back now, because I really thoroughly enjoy just being given that freedom just to go. Which I never thought I would or could, to be honest.
No. So you said you're writing book 6 at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I'm planning it. Yes, I've just finished book 5.
So book 5's gone in for sort of finishing the things. So that'll be, so hopefully some proofs will be flying around of that. Has it got a name? Are you allowed to say?
Yes, it's called The Blame Game.
The Blame Game.
Yes.
And can we know anything about it, or is it?
Yeah, it's a bit more crimey, I think, than I've gone before. So it's still domestic suspense, but it's definitely got more of a thriller aspect to it. And you know very early on, again in the prologue, that something quite dramatic happens.
Good.
And it's about a psychotherapist, Naomi, whose client goes missing. And basically all the evidence points to her, you know, being the main suspect. And she has to prove that you know, she knows she's telling the truth, but the evidence proves that she's lying, basically. So she has to find ways to uncover what on earth has happened to her client and where he is and why it's happened and why she's being, you know, the finger's being pointed at her. So it's quite, yeah, it's a lot more crimey than I've gone, but I've really enjoyed it, actually.
Oh, that sounds really good. Oh, we'll have to wait a whole. Will that come out sort of next summer, sort of late
Yeah, it's
summer?
going to be June, I think.
Oh, well, that's just something to look forward to, because we've been
Yes.
through dark winter and then June. It's good though, because I mean the great thing about you know, getting proofs and reading is that you get them sort of so far in advance. So at the moment they're getting sort of March next year, so it won't be long before the June ones start coming.
No.
So
And that's beginning to happen, is it, Karen, from your end? Because obviously we had like a year or two of, you know, not so many proofs going out and everything being so delayed, but that they're
definitely
beginning
February
to
and
come through.
March. Yes, definitely. So
Right. Oh, that's good news.
So fingers crossed for so you should.
Oh, that is good
start
news.
seeing.
Yeah.
So we're nearly. I'm just looking at the time, and we're nearly at the end. So I've got a few quick ones that I'll ask you. So, is there another genre that you'd like to write, and if so, what would it be?
I would like to give romance a go. I don't think I would be very good at it, but I would like to. Again, it might be another kind of secret project that I do just for me, just to see if I can. But I don't think, going back to what I was saying earlier, because I like to leave each chapter kind of with a little bit of a mini cliffhanger. I don't know that would work for romance, and yeah, I don't know, but I would like to give it a go. I would like to give it a go. Yeah.
You have to maybe do it, like you say, do it as a pseudonym or something. And
yes, yeah, possibly. I just don't know that I'd be very good, but I'd give it a go.
It could be exciting. They could have like lots of relationships and just like hanging on, you know, changing and.
But there would definitely be dead people, and that just doesn't work, does
No,
it?
no.
And I can't help myself.
Do you have a favorite book that you have written? Have you got one? Is your
I think The Other Woman will always have a very special place in my heart for very obvious reasons. And I think my favourite will always be the one that I'm either working on or I've just finished. Yeah. I know that sounds a little bit lame, but it really is. I think it's very true, because you get so excited and so fired up about the one that you're working on. And yeah, so I think that at this moment in time, I would say The Blame Game is my favourite at the moment. Yes.
Nice. And finally, what do you like to read? And can you recommend anything that you've read recently to everybody watching this evening?
Yes. So I always in the library and bookshops, I always go to the thriller shelves. Always. I can't help myself. It's just where I naturally go. However, in the summer, I was at the airport and picked up a book called The Idea of You by Robin Lee. And it wasn't, have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, wow. It wasn't anything that I would normally pick up, but I read the back and thought, okay, it sounds interesting. Let's just, you know, it's different. And it blew me away, I have to say. It's, is it a romance? Possibly, yes. I'd probably class it more generally under women's fiction.
Right.
But it's this kind of love affair and love story of a 40-year-old mother with a 13-year-old daughter. And she takes her daughter to this pop concert to see this boy band that her daughter kind of just got all over her bedroom and posters everywhere. And the mother falls in love with the lead singer, who's kind of 20 years old, half her age. And it's this incredible love affair between them. And it blew me away. It's quite saucy. It gets a little bit naughty, which I wasn't quite expecting. But what I quite liked about it was that the fact that I could relax into it rather than constantly wait for the big reveal or try and work anything out, which I'm, like all of us who read crime or thrillers, we're just, as soon as we start, our brains are kind of working overtime, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I just really enjoyed not putting myself under that kind of pressure. And it's just a genre that I've not really read at all. So I will, I really highly recommend it. The Idea of You by Robin Lee. And I'll definitely be reading more off-piste now, I think, because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I love suspense and crime and thrillers, but I think sometimes it's nice to have something different, just to move away, just because I think you do get sort of conditioned into reading, like you said, your brain, like especially when you're reading, because you do want to work out who it is. So it is quite nice just to have a complete change. I'm reading a fantasy book at the moment called I can't remember, the Clockwork Review, and it's massive. It's 700 pages, but that's fantasy, and that's really out of my
that's not something I would pick up. But are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I am enjoying it. It's really different, and I think because it's so different, I think that's what I'm enjoying about it, because it's not, I don't read fantasy hardly at all, so I sort of wanted to read a bit wider this year, because I do tend to read women's fiction, thrillers, crime, that sort of thing. So it's quite nice to I didn't think sci-fi is another genre I don't sort of tend to head into at all, but it was good. It's good to move outside your comfort zone sometimes, isn't it?
I think it just kind of cleanses the mind a little bit for a while, doesn't it? Just kind of, and also just realize that there are, there's lots of other stuff out there.
Oh, definitely, so much. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and The Guilt Trip is out now, and it is a fab read, and I'm going to be finishing it this evening, and I've got the day off tomorrow, so I'm going to be definitely finishing it. So I might have to message you about who the other person was that died.
Yes, please. Yes. Yes, do. Let me know once you're finished. Let me know what you think.
I will. I definitely will. Our next In Conversation is on next Monday, and that's with author Kate Lord Brown, and she will be discussing her latest book, Summer Castle. So I look forward to joining you then. Thank you so much again, Sandie, for joining us. It's been
Thank you, Karen.
Great to chat to you, and I can't wait to see what's next.